Welcome back to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, we start from Libya, where 44 migrants have been killed after an airstrike by forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar hit a refugee detention centre. 130 others were wounded in the raid in an eastern suburb of the capital, Tripoli. The targeted hangar in the Tajura area was home to over 120 African migrants. Monitors say it's the highest toll from an airstrike since Haftar's forces launched their Tripoli offensive 3 months ago. Libya is the main departure point for African migrants fleeing poverty and war to reach Italy by boat. The Libyan government and the UN have condemned the airstrikes. The UAE has denied reports linking it to US-made missiles used in Libya, saying it's committed to the United Nations arms embargo. The country also urged warring sides to reduce tensions and re-engage in the UN political process. Sudan's ruling generals and protest leaders are meeting today for talks on creating a governing body. The dialogues are being mediated by the African Union and Ethiopia. This follows the opposition announcement it will step up protests in mid-July to push the ruling military to return power to civilians. Earlier, 11 people were killed as tens of thousands of protesters marched on the presidential palace to demand civilian rule. It was the first mass protest since a deadly crackdown on protesters that killed dozens last month. Protesters and generals have been locked in a power struggle since the fall of longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir in April. Well, Iran says it will boost its uranium enrichment level beyond the 2015 nuclear deal limits from July 7th. President Hassan Rouhani has asked the US and the EU to negotiate if they want to save the nuclear accord. Rouhani says Iran will increase in the enrichment level as much as it wants. Chairing a cabinet meeting, he said Tehran will comply with the 2015 deal if the other signatories do so as well. The president threatened to restart Iran's Iraq nuclear reactor operations from July 7th if the US and EU don't fulfill their commitments. Rouhani promised Tehran will reduce enrichment below the set limit once all JCPOA members are in compliance. The UN and the EU have called on signatories, including the United States, to respect and protect the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. This comes after reports claimed Iran has amassed more low-enriched uranium than permitted under the deal. The EU's Federica Mogherini and 3 European members of the JCPOA have called on Iran to return to the agreed uranium limit. The UN Secretary spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says the deal is the turning point for multilateral diplomacy. He says all members of the deal, including the United States, must respect it. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif strongly denies the reports, saying Tehran has crossed its uranium enrichment limit under the deal. Now, hundreds of Israelis have protested against police brutality after an Ethiopian teen was shot dead. Demonstrators blocked highways and other main intersections around the country, protesting at ethnic discrimination by the police. Protesters burned tires and carried placards calling for justice. This is in response to off-duty police officer shooting and killing Solomon Teka, an 18-year-old Ethiopian Israeli in a suburb of Haifa. A police spokesman says the officer who carried out the shooting has been arrested. He also says 60 protesters have also been detained after they attacked the police. Ethiopians living in Israel have frequently complained of racist discrimination. Well, UK PM hopeful Jeremy Hunt says a Brexit deal is not possible with the Irish backstop still in place. Speaking at a hustings event in Belfast, Boris Johnson said an EU divorce deal couldn't include the current Irish backstop provision. More in this report.
The Irish backstop is an insurance policy in the UK-EU Brexit negotiations. It is meant to make sure that the Irish border remains open, whatever the outcome of the UK and the EU negotiations. Jeremy Hunt said the backstop in its current form is not acceptable.
The fundamental issue with the backstop is not the principle that we shouldn't have border infrastructure on the island of Ireland. I think that's accepted by all sides in the Conservative Party, by the DUP, by everyone who's been involved in this debate. The principle is the backstop which traps us into following EU customs tariffs until the EU give us permission to leave the customs union.
Jeremy Hunt stressed the need to find a technological solution to the Irish backstop.
And we have to find a different solution. And I think it will be a technology-led solution, what the Germans call an invisible border. We are rapidly understanding the potential of technology now.
Speaking shortly after Hunt, Boris Johnson said the Irish border issue can be resolved during negotiations for a free trade deal. He said, "We will not have a hard border in any situation."
I think it's absolutely vital here in Northern Ireland to stress two things. And number one, that we will under no circumstances have a hard border. There will be no physical checks or infrastructure at the border in Northern Ireland. And number two, we will make sure we have an exit from the EU.
Managing the border between the UK and Ireland has proven the most contentious element of divorce negotiations between London and the bloc.
And staying with the European Union, and leaders have finally decided who will lead the organisation after days of dispute. German Defence Minister Ursula von der Leyen has been nominated as the new European Commission President. The candidate for the fifth key role, President of the European Parliament, is to be chosen today. More in this report.
After 3 days of exhaustive and strenuous negotiations, the EU's deadlock over its bloc's top jobs has been broken. In an unprecedented move, the summit put forward the names of two women for consideration. European Council President Donald Tusk has praised the bloc's gender parity.
We have chosen two women and two men for the four key positions. A perfect gender balance. I am really happy about it. After all, Europe is a woman.
German Defence Minister Ursula von der Leyen was nominated as the new president of the European Commission. This comes after the frontrunners were rejected. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has expressed her disappointment.
I don't want to carry this business of the principle to my grave, but I also don't think it was particularly helpful to right away, as the first thing, tell the strongest political force that their lead candidate will most definitely not even be considered as suitable for election to the position of Commission President. But we don't want to draw this out any further. We now need to look to the future.
IMF Chief Christine Lagarde has been nominated as the first woman to head the European Central Bank. Belgian Liberal Prime Minister Charles Michel has been put forward to replace European Council President Donald Tusk.
Of course, I would want also to thank my colleagues for the support. Europe is facing challenges, and in my opinion, these challenges are also opportunities.
The choices still need to be debated and ratified by the European Parliament.
Now, an Italian court has lifted the house arrest order for a German captain who brought 41 migrants ashore. Italy's hardline Interior Minister Matteo Salvini wasted no time to strongly denounce the ruling. Salvini campaigned to bar charities from bringing refugees to Italian ports, and in a series of tweets, he expressed remorse at what he called the failure of the Italian judicial system. Italian prosecutors requested to uphold a house arrest order in place for Sea-Watch captain Carola Rackete. But the judge overturned the order, saying Rackete was doing her duty, saving human lives. Sea-Watch 3 that spent 2 weeks at sea, carrying more than 40 migrants. In Tunisia, an alleged militant has blown himself up at a bus stop in the capital, Tunis, after being chased by police. It comes just 5 days after Tunisia's capital was hit by 2 suicide bombers, killing a police officer and wounding 8 others. Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the targeted militant was a suspect in last week's attacks. The frequent violence comes months ahead of the country's general elections. Tunisia has been battling militant groups near the border with Algeria since 2011. In Japan, nearly 1 million people are being evacuated from the southern city of Kagoshima. The residents were told to take shelter in evacuation centers when torrential rains threatened landslides and other damage to the city. About 900 millimeters of rain has battered Kyushu Island over the past week. Japan's meteorological agency says heavy rain will continue until Thursday. More than 200 people were killed in western Japan last July when heavy rains triggered landslides and flooding. Now, in Bangladesh, courts have sentenced 9 leaders of the BNP-led opposition alliance to death and 25 others to life imprisonment. The defendants were accused of attacking a train carrying Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina 25 years ago. The District and Sessions Court also sent 12 others to prison for 10 years. Among the convicts, 5 died during the trial at Pabna Court, which lasted for 25 years. The BNP leader Khalida Zia is currently imprisoned in what she says is a case of political victimization. The United Nations' latest report on the persecution of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar suggests possible war crimes by the military. The UN says security forces are committing human rights violations against civilians in the western state. A 2017 military crackdown forced over 700,000 Rohingya Muslims to flee to neighboring Bangladesh. The UN calls it an event with genocidal intent. The UN's independent expert on human rights in Myanmar, Yangi Lee, says there's an ongoing tragedy in Rakhine State. She says the conflict between Myanmar's army and northern Rakhine fighters is devastating civilian life.
There are deeply disturbing reports of civilians, mostly ethnic Rakhine men, being disappeared or detained and interrogated by the Tatmadaw on suspicion of association with the Arakan army. Several of them have died while in the custody of the Tatmadaw.
Well, do stay with us for more news after this short break. Welcome back to Indus News. Well, 6 people have been killed and 18 others are missing after a dam breach in India. The dam crumbled after the heaviest monsoon rains in a decade hit western Maharashtra state. Authorities say the Tiwa dam failure washed away dozens of homes in the coastal district of Ratnagiri. The National Disaster Response Force is working to recover any missing people. This year's heavy monsoon rains has claimed more than 70 lives in India. Well, the United States has added the Balochistan Liberation Army and Hezbollah fighter Hossein Ali Hazima to its list of global terrorists. The State Department has also listed Jundala as a foreign terrorist organization. It says the Balochistan Liberation Army, Jundullah and Hezbollah's Hazima continue to engage in activities that threaten U.S. security. Terrorist designations expose and isolate organizations and individuals, denying access to the U.S. financial system. Pakistan's Foreign Office says it's important terrorists and their helpers are held accountable and brought to justice. While staying with security in Pakistan, and it's installing fences to secure the porous border it shares with Afghanistan. Despite resistance from the Afghan side, the initiative has reduced militant activity, bringing peace to tribal districts. More in this report by our correspondent Sumaira Khan.
The Durand Line, Pakistan's border with Afghanistan, runs along jagged terrain and snow-covered peaks as high as 12,000 feet. Islamabad is constructing a fence to curb illegal immigration and infiltration across the 640-kilometer long boundary touches Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan province.
The situation in Bajaur was so bad a few years back that we were forced to flee to other parts of the country. We lived as internally displaced people. Now peace has returned and we came back after security forces started fencing the border.
The project will cost anywhere from $500 to $600 million. It includes a state-of-the-art surveillance system, closed-circuit television and drone cameras for day and night monitoring. Locals term the project essential for not only peacekeeping but development and efforts to increase literacy rate in the war-torn area. An example of this could be Painda China Educational Complex in Tira Valley, the first educational facility for children since independence of Pakistan.
Our district is deemed as one of the most backwards areas of Pakistan. In this regard, education is the only solution and projects are needed which would give our kids quality education. We appreciate the military authorities for initiatives. There should be more educational institutes.
After this success, people hail from other Pashtun tribes have also come forward to demand more schools and colleges.
This is the Tira Educational Complex. It is the first such institute established in the valley since the independence of Pakistan. Even people from far-flung areas are eager to get their children enrolled. Many even arrange for their children's transport means to school beforehand. So far, we have enrolled 850 kids, including 100 girls.
As of January 2019, some 800 kilometers out of the 1200 have been covered. Work on 233 out of 843 forts has been completed in Priority 1 areas within Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan provinces. The rest of the area is expected to be covered by December 2019. Right now I'm standing at Landi Kotal checkpost of Pakistan Security Forces, which is situated at Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and it is the exact point where the fencing process has taken place, and behind me it is quite visible to all, and according to the officials, right now around 600 kilometers area has been covered and fenced. Stop that infiltration. Pakistan has also faced 27 casualties due to Afghan resistance during this whole process of fencing the border, but the Pakistani side is right now quite optimistic that the area that has been marked critical, and it is around 900 kilometers that falls in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, will be completed quite soon and by the end of this year. This is Sumaira Khan from Landi Kotal checkpost, Pakistan-Afghanistan border for Indus News.
Well, the Pentagon says a recent Chinese missile launch in the disputed South China Sea is disturbing. It says the missile test contradicts Beijing's pledges that it will not militarize the area. A spokesman says the Pentagon is aware of Chinese actions in the region, and China's foreign ministry has yet to confirm the missile tests. Beijing did say it's carrying out its military drills between Spratly and Paracel Islands, and it's warned other ships not to enter the area. 14 crew members have died after a fire broke out on a deep-sea vessel in Russia. The Defense Ministry says the submersible was carrying out marine environment research in Russian waters. President Putin has ordered a probe into the incident. The loss has echoes of the sinking of the Kursk in the year 2000, which claimed the lives of 118 personnel. Now, an Arctic fox has amazed scientists by walking from Norway to Canada in just 76 days. Scientists at the Norwegian Polar Institute tracked the fox's journey with a special tracker. The animal walked 3,500 kilometers before scientists lost the tracking device signal. The fox's whereabouts are currently unknown. Now, in business, stocks in Asia have fallen as initial enthusiasm over the latest US-China trade truce has faded. Washington's latest threats to impose tariffs on EU goods worth $4 billion had made markets a bit jittery. Mainland Chinese markets were down almost 1%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 slipped 0.6% at the close. Hong Kong's Hang Seng and South Korea's Kopsi were also down. Australian markets bucked the overall regional trend by rising. European markets traded higher in earlier sessions after EU leaders reached a consensus on nominations for the bloc's leading positions. The US stock index futures were slightly higher at the open. Futures on the S&P and Nasdaq were also both slightly higher. Oil prices were higher in the afternoon of Asian trading hours, bouncing back from Tuesday's tumble. And in football, in the Africa Cup of Nations, Tunisia only managed a goalless draw against Mauritania, while Mali beat Angola by 1-0. Both sides now move to the quarter-finals. Tunisia dominated their game, keeping possession throughout. Youssef Massakni missed a crucial opportunity to put Tunisia into the lead in the second half. But Tunisia finished as Group E runners-up and faced Ghana in their quarter-final match. Mali knocked out Angola by a 0-0 to book their place in the quarters. Amadou Haidara found the net with a fierce drive from outside the box to score the game's only goal. Defending champions, the United States reached the Women's World Cup final after beating England by 2-1. It will be the Americans' fifth final, while England are bundled out in their third World Cup semi-final. Playing in Lyon, US striker Christian Press opened the scoring after just 10 minutes. That was quickly equalised with a close-range strike from England's Ellen White. Star player Alex Morgan put the US back in the lead with a header. The game ended dramatically when England's skipper Steph Houghton's 84th minute spot kick was kept out by goalkeeper Alicia Nehar. The US will play the final on Sunday. Well, it's nice and sunny here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's the news for now, but do stay tuned for further updates on Indus News.